ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone, and Happy New Year. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. A big shout out to my producer, Jacob. Jacob, how were your holidays?
Hey Erica, how are you doing today?
Doing well.
Great. My holidays were awesome. I got to spend some time down in Florida with my wife and my new family-in-law. Got some sunshine, went to the beach, and then came home to a bunch of snow on the ground. So got a bit of both, and I'm happy about that.
So semi getting ready to get back into the routine and back into the groove after the holiday chaos and maybe potential overindulgence, but
Yes.
not for the cold weather.
Exactly. Yep. And definitely still recovering from some of that indulging that we did, but that's okay.
Oh, yes. I mean, every little bit in moderation and sometimes a little overindulgence isn't going to hurt you. And last week I did fill in for Dr. Pat and talked about being a goal digger and achieving goals. I mean, if you didn't hear it live, check out the podcast. But one goal or New Year's resolution that many set is to get their health and wellness in check. And that is one of the items that we're going to talk sort of about today. Your health, more importantly, your heart health, and how it affects not just the patient, but really everyone around you. And my guest today is Dr. Charles Michael Coleman. He's an executive coach, a patient, an advocate, human capital business partner, educator, author, and founder of Hearts in the Family. Mike Coleman lost his father and three brothers to heart disease all before the age of 65. Determined to beat the odds of his own diagnosis and potential early death, Dr. Coleman launched Hearts in the Family, a support network for families facing heart disease. I could go on and on about his incredible list of credentials and experience, but I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about all of that. Please welcome Mike Coleman. Mike, thank you for being on the show with us today.
Hi, Erica. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all the folks out there in virtual land.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on the show. And what I wanted to do is just tell listeners about your background and experience.
Okay, absolutely. Well, as you so eloquently mentioned, I am focused on heart health. I am a heart patient, heart surgery survivor. I had open heart surgery back in Mother's Day weekend, 2012. Wasn't the best Mother's Day, but we survived it. And I come from a family with a long history of cardiovascular disease, like so many folks out there that deal with this terrible disease. And just to mention that heart disease, even though COVID-19 has been just terrible, it's been horrendous what it's done to the population, still heart disease will take out more people on an annual basis. And it's one of those things that we just can't lose focus on in terms of building our overall health. As I mentioned, my father had heart disease and died at age 62. I had three brothers, all that perished by the age of 65 with heart disease. There's one other brother and myself that are still here, and we're doing everything we can to beat the odds of this terrible disease. and learning to live effectively with it. I mean, it is a disease, and like so many folks out there with whatever condition, whatever affects you, you can either be a victim of it, or you can lean in and you can do your absolute best and reach out to help folks. One of the things that happened to me when I was in the hospital, I went through the process. Well, and actually, if I can back it up just for a little bit, tell you how this happened. One day, I was going to work, and I got this strange pain in my neck. It was just kind of an unusual shooting pain, and I thought, that doesn't feel too good. But I was on my way to work, and I was supposed to meet my boss, and my boss we had not gotten along very well of late. And quite honestly, like many managers, he was a bit of a jerk. And as I tell him now, I'm so appreciative of the fact that he was a jerk, because he was so much of a jerk that I said, you know what, I'm going to take care of me today. I'm going to the hospital to get myself checked out. So I went to the hospital, and immediately when you show up at the hospital, they say, hey, you're an African-American male in your 50s, you're having chest pains. You are going to have some issues. Let's get you checked out right away. Erica, yes. So we went through a series of tests, and they said, well, guys, your blood pressure is high. We're going to do a nuclear stress test on you. We're going to run a full battery of things, which they did, but they didn't really find anything. And so from that, we went to, I went through to see a cardiologist and went through the same series of tests. And she says, you know, Mr. Coleman, there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, we've run all the tests that we're supposed to run. And I said, doctor, why then, if you tell me there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm standing here right now on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about a 7. So she said, okay, there's one more test we can do. We're going to do a heart cath procedure and shoot some dye into your heart to see what's going on. And when they actually did that, that's when they found out that I had 3 blocked arteries, major blocked, and that my prognosis, I would have probably been one of those guys who, you know, goes to work on day in and day out, comes home one day, decides to cut the grass. After I cut the grass, I sit down at the dinner table, and I would have checked out. It just would have been the end of me. And then I said, gosh, we didn't see it coming. And so.
And that's good, because you're an advocate for yourself. I mean, and more people need to do that, to push. Yes, we aren't medical experts, but we also know our body, right?
Yes.
We're the ones who know ourselves the best, even if we choose not to see some of the things or ignore some of the things about ourselves. But we know our bodies best, and if we're not advocating for ourselves, there's so many things that could be missed. I mean, not only health-wise, you know, personally, professionally, everything.
Exactly right. And speaking from a man's standpoint, the one thing that I talk about is there's the warrior man and the little boy. And sometimes, you know, as guys, we're said, if you get hurt, rub some dirt in it. You get hurt, get back in the game. You get hurt, cowboy up. But every now and then, when we do get hurt, we want to cry for help. And that's the little boy saying, you know, this really does hurt. But in those situations, like in my case, when you go to the hospital, and if they don't find anything, then you're like the kid that cried wolf. You're like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not doing this again. And unfortunately, that's where we lose a lot of people, because they do get a warning sign. It's not correctly diagnosed, and then it's curtains.
Yeah. So how do you, so, you know, you discovered that you have heart disease, and, you know, how best to then overcome, like you said, that helplessness feeling and really lean into, okay, now what? And how do you work with your medical team and overcome the different obstacles that come into place when you want to beat the odds?
Well, and again, the first thing is to recognize your situation. Be aware of your family history. Be aware of certain medical conditions around you, and be aware of your lifestyle. It's important that we have a relationship with a medical care provider, that we're getting those annual exams, those wellness exams. They make a difference. So at least you've got a baseline of things that can occur with you. And it's even more so as we move from middle age into our 50s and 60s, particularly, that we're aware of some of these chronic conditions that have continued to take a toll on us. Even now with heart disease and having received the heart surgery, one of the things that we always have to be aware of, that doesn't stop the disease. I interrupted it. I got my pipes cleaned out and it interrupted what was going on, but the plaque buildup will continue to occur in my body. And so I just have to do all the little things I can, changing my diet, working out, reducing stress in order to be a more a better patient. And for me, helping work with other patients also makes me a better patient myself.
Yes. And so let's get into a little bit of that on, this is potentially a bad analogy, but have you ever learned a new word, or you got a new vehicle, or you found out you have cancer or a disease or a heart condition, and you swear you've never heard that word before, or you never noticed all the black Jeeps out there, and all of a sudden they're popping up everywhere. You know somebody with cancer, you hear nothing but heart disease, you hear all this stuff out there, and it just seems like everything is popping up in your daily life. And I'm wondering, why is that? Is it because we are more aware? Are we doing our research? And let's get into some of that about doing the research and investigation. And, what better person to discuss that with than you, who is a researcher and investigator yourself. So, how have those talents of yours as a researcher been so important on your journey?
Thanks so very much. One of the things that again, once I decided and came through this process of dealing with heart disease, I had just begun a journey to complete a PhD, and I was initially going to study what's the financial impact of male depression. And once I had gone through the heart surgery, I realized one of the things that's going on is, for men particularly, I kind of went through that journey by myself. I had one person that came along as a volunteer and talked to me in the hospital from the Mended Hearts group, and they're the largest peer-to-peer support group for people with heart disease. And he talked to me and explained some things about the condition, but then I thought, well, goodness, how come there aren't more men coming along and helping other guys through this process? And so that triggered a research question for me, and I began to look at. I did a research study on African American male cardiovascular peer support volunteers. Why do these guys do what they do? Why do they go into the hospitals and talk to people? What's great, or what motivates them to do that kind of work? And there were some incredible and interesting findings that came along with that. Do you want me to jump into those now, or do we?
Let's talk about it, because I think in doing not only the research, but that you were doing, what did you find? It's, not only the volunteer aspect of it, but did you see any racism, institutional healthcare concerns and other great findings from your research as you were going into this?
Absolutely. And the first thing that we found was there's a history of mistrust within the African American community, and I say African American, but really in the brown communities, because a lot of horrible things were done to our Hispanic brothers and sisters also over the years. But of some of the more famous things, many people remember the Tuskegee syphilis experiments that were conducted in the last century on African American airmen. But there are many times in our community where African Americans, women also would not get the health care that they probably should have for any number of reasons. Chief of those, again, was some historical racism and prejudice in the system. So within the community, there's a distrust of doctors. That's one of the things that came out of my research. And so for men in particular, a lot of the folks were afraid that if they go in the hospital, someone's going to steal their organs, that they're going to get the surgery and they're going to die, and their organs are going to be harvested for someone else. And so that was a underlying kind of a fear that still goes on. There is an underlying fear that people, that the medical community, the doctors, who happen to, in many cases, happen to be from a different ethnic background than the patients, don't understand my lifestyle. You don't know the pressures that I'm under. You don't know the stress that I deal with. But the doctors are at the same time are looking at a sick patient. They're looking at your heart, and they're saying, well, we can do these things for your heart, but if there's no trust between the patient and the doctor, and in many cases, what we found is there's almost a bit of censoring between the patient and the doctor. The doctors are saying, gosh, this guy's overweight, or he's this, he's got these conditions. We're going to give them some protocols, but they're not going to follow it. So I'm kind of wasting my time here. And the patient, on the other hand, is looking at the doctor and saying, you don't even see me as a patient. You just see me as just another case. You don't see me as an individual.
And that's hard, because then the mistrust goes on both levels, right? It's a poor statement, but why should I waste my time on this patient when they're not going to do what they need to do? And why should I communicate everything on this end when he's not even seeing me? He's seeing me as a shell, not as a person. And,
Yes.
Then you get into the whole cyclical pattern of it just goes round and round.
Absolutely. And another thing with men, one of the things that we found with men, cardiovascular disease, one of the things that also affects in many cases our ability to perform sexually, erectile dysfunction, blood flow issues. And while many men, particularly the older baby boomers and the traditionalists, they're not used to talking about those kind of issues, particularly with someone outside their community. I mean, we suffer in shame with some of those conditions. So what we found from the volunteers is if the doctor would say, once we fix your heart, you're probably going to be able to perform better in bed. You'll restore some of your masculinity. Well, when you say that, all of a sudden the guy starts to listen. He's going to perk up a little bit more. When I told my wife about that research, she goes, all you guys do is think about sex. That's all you think about. And I said, well, okay, but that's part of our masculinity. That helps identify us. I said, oftentimes, if we reverse that situation, I was to say to a breast cancer patient, why do you need a mastectomy? You know, I mean, you're 50 years old, 60 years old, you're not going to be breastfeeding anymore. Why, you know, why do you need that? Well, I need that to make me feel like a woman. I need that. Yeah. And so it's the same kind of thing for men also.
Well, and it is, it's learning about the patient, right, as a person, and
Mhm.
what makes them tick. Because
Mhm.
if you know what makes them tick, you know how to communicate with them.
Yes.
And that, I don't want to get too much into that because we're going to get into that the next segment on whole communication, but it's a perfect analogy because you need to understand how someone thinks, which is hard. I know in the healthcare community when you only have a certain amount of time with a patient, but it's also, as you said, being that advocate for yourself to ask those questions. And that's hard, right? I mean, going in and talking about things that are in the bedroom or things that are in the bathroom, right? And those sort of where you don't want to open yourself up, that's personal, right? But at the same time, it is a part of your overall health and wellness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, not only is it something that you know you don't really want to talk about, goodness, you in many cases, even between a married couple, he's blaming her for his erectile dysfunction, and in many cases, women will take on that burden. You know, wives will say, you know, she knows it's not her fault, but she'll let a guy dump that onto her. And one of the things that I found from the volunteers when they would go into to see a patient right before their surgery, they would walk in and say, hey, listen, your condition, your heart condition is not your wife's fault. It's not your kid's fault. You have to take ownership of where you're at today and not blame anybody else, because as long as you're blaming someone else, you're not going to fix what needs to happen.
Yes, no, and that's true. I mean, your condition affects everyone, but it's not they didn't cause it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, you know, being able to understand your condition yourself, being able to get into having a mentor, a volunteer, a support system is so important. And I want to get into that, and we'll do that after a quick break. But tell us now, you have an event coming up, don't you, around the 9th?
Yes, we are actually, we had an event coming up. The COVID, like so many things, has caused us to, we're having to push it back, but we were doing an I Communicate event, and it was targeted for women. It was along the lines of understanding dad, and it was to discuss the communication issues and some of the baggage that men carry into relationships.
Well, and I think that's an awesome thing that everybody needs to hear, not men, women, because sometimes you don't even realize you do that. So how can people get a hold of you, Mike? Where can they find out more about you, find out more about Hearts in the Family, so that they can watch for this event in the future?
We will post it. We'll have it up on the website, heartsinthefamily.com, but also will be circulating some information on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, to get the information out there when that next event is going to be coming up, as well as some other events that we're looking to host going down the road. A couple of communication events for fathers, helping men unpack some of the issues that we have, and usually we do those. They're men only. It's a men only kind of event, so that we feel safe enough to talk about these issues, and we will do those both virtual and in person.
Wonderful. So check out heartsinthefamily.com. Also follow Dr. Charles Michael Coleman on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about communication. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Mike Coleman, founder of Hearts in the Family. And I want to jump right into this segment because it's all about communication. And we all know how important good communication and exchange of information can make a huge difference to how patients react and their ability to cope. But it's more than just that, isn't it, Mike?
Absolutely. It's more, and it's not. It really, so much of it comes to communication. And in those kind of spaces, when we are dealing with a medical emergency, the first thing we're looking at is you're moving along, everything is good, and all of a sudden you get this diagnosis, this acute diagnosis of heart disease, and you think, well, my life could be over. And you have a lot of medical professionals coming at you, telling you different things. Some of the things you may have heard, some of them you may have experienced, because if like in my case, you've had a history of heart disease, when you get that diagnosis, you immediately have a flashback and go, oh God, now I've got the curse. And we see that with particularly families that deal with cancer. It was in the last generation. Now it's with me, and there's in some cases just a failure to recognize or even acknowledge you've had the condition. I'll refer back again in my own case that I fought so hard to advocate for the doctors to find out what was wrong with me. And after I had a Cath procedure and they determined that I had 3 blocked arteries and I needed a bypass, my first reaction then was, well, gosh, I'm not going to do that. I saw something like this on 60 Minutes, and these guys are just probably going to, there's a doctor just trying to make some money off of me. And of course, thank goodness for big sisters, because my older sister called me up immediately and she says, you're an educated idiot. I said, what do you mean, sis? she said the reason that they want to work on you is because you are healthy enough to go through a procedure. She said, more importantly, now how many people in our family are suffering with this condition? What makes you think that you wouldn't have it yourself? And I'm going, well, I guess you're right. You probably have a point there. So, learning to listen, learning to get outside yourself, and acknowledge some of your own fears. It's okay. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not know everything that's going on. What's not okay is to tuck your head in the sand and not deal with it.
Yeah. So it's more about also, like you said, it's the asking questions. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of generational gaps, right? I mean, I know when my parents were alive, you just listened and then you went away and then you had all these questions, but it was, why didn't you ask that? Well, he didn't tell me, so I didn't think it was important. Or, it's learning how to ask the questions and knowing what questions. And you don't know that, because a lot of times when you hear news of, heart disease, cancer, some big medical diagnosis, all you heard was that first part, and everything else was like the teacher from the Peanuts, and yes. You don't hear anything else.
Yes.
And I think it's making sure that you are listening to the best of your ability once you receive that news, but asking the questions, not being afraid. Like, you, of course, you can be afraid.
Mhm.
Absolutely, it's life altering uh, decision that you've just heard and diagnosis, but it's, don't be afraid to ask the wrong question, because you don't know what you don't know, and you're only
Mhm.
going to learn by asking those questions. And you had mentioned about your volunteering, but first you had volunteers coming in, and how did they support you? And then as you got through yours, how did your volunteering help you as well?
So, and thank you. There was a gentleman by the name of Ken Gurman who came into my room on my third day in the hospital, and that happened to be a day when I was supposed to get up and walk around, go for a short walk, because they always want to keep you moving around to keep pneumonia and other conditions from setting up in your lungs. And he says, "Well, I'm from Mended Hearts, and we are a support community. So if it's okay with you, I'll walk with you." And just that 10 minutes of walking down the hallway and back, and letting me know that I didn't have to fight this thing alone, letting me know that there's a support community of people that I can ask questions to. Because the first thing that he said, "Gosh, I spent some time on this room also, or on this hospital wing. I was across the hall. I had frequent flyer miles in the bed across the hall," and he says, "Look at me. I got through it. You're going to get through this thing also." And knowing, okay, I can see an end goal, instead of I look in the mirror and I see this horrible scar, and and I'm just thinking everything is done. And so that makes a huge difference in terms of helping you see the other side of that bridge that you have to cross.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, and that's an important designation that you made, is that somebody else who went through it, you could see they're on the other side, right?
Yes.
They still have a journey, of course, ahead of them, but they're on the other side. And I
Yes.
think that does help people when you see somebody who's gone through something very similar, that, hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
And a peer support person is so critical, because unlike the doctors who have never been on the sharp end of a scalpel in many cases, your peer support person has been in that bed. They've gone through the pain. They know the false alarms, the phantom pains, all the kinds of things that may occur. Your journey is going to be unique to you, but there are some general things that folks go through in that community, and that makes a difference. And I want to say one other thing, which is so important about the peer support volunteers. Not only do they talk to you, the patient, but they talk to your caregiver.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife said that the most frightening day of her life was the day that I came home from the hospital, and I didn't understand. I'm like, what I'm the one
I'm
in
coming
pain.
home, right?
What are you talking about? And as she said, when I checked out, she had a book of instructions and all these things that she was supposed to look out for, and all she kept thinking is, what if I miss something? What if I don't pick up on something? And again, thank goodness that Mended Hearts was there, because they said, here's a number for your wife to call. She has some questions, not necessarily medical, because if it's a medical question, yes, you're going to call the nurse, you're going to call someone, and they'll deal with that situation. But sometimes it could be, little things like, well, how do they roll in the bed? How do you roll them in and out of bed? if they're cold, or, is it okay for them to cough? Is it okay for me to touch them? And so those kinds of things that, you may not want to ask a nurse. You want to talk with someone else who's kind of been through that.
Yeah, and caregiver support is crucial. I mean, you think when my parents were both had different illnesses and needed care, and it was, I remember when I first brought home my son, and I was like, they're just giving him to me, like there's no instruction book. I felt the same way when we were taking my parents home at separate times from the hospital. Wait, I need to do what? Like, and it's that caregiver support that is needed. Of course, the patient needs it, and we need to give that to them and help them get through things. But the disease, the illness affects everybody around you, your loved ones, and getting that proper communication and support to them is just as crucial.
Absolutely, and it goes both directions. For many heart patients, one of the challenges that they'll face when they go home is, well, I need to have a different diet, and
we're going to talk about that right after this break. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk unloading your stress, leading a healthy lifestyle, and wellness. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events, and pricing for upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. So welcome back to my guest, Mike Coleman. Thank you so much for being on the show today and talking about heart health. Tell folks how they can learn more about Hearts in the Family and learn more about upcoming events that you have.
Again, I will invite them to go to heartsinthefamily.com, all one word, and you can get information on the things that we're doing in the future, and some of the programs we have coming up. Sign up as a friend, and we will continue to send information out to you. Additionally, if you want to find information about, for example, my latest book that I worked with the Professional Woman Network, and in there I did a chapter on everything that a man wants a woman to know about heart disease. And it's available on the website as well as at PWN Books. You can follow me on Hearts in the Family at Facebook and on Instagram.
Wonderful. And it is a pleasure to have a man in the Professional Woman Network, because we learn so much from you. I know you learn a lot from us, but we learn so much from you. And it's been a great pleasure to have you and be a part of our respective journeys in that organization. So this segment, we want to talk about unloading your stress and how leading a healthy lifestyle and wellness really come into play.
So it's so critical. If I am going to, I was just looking for, here we go, a picture. Can you see this?
Yes, Heartbeat.
Heartbeat magazine. That's the magazine that Mended Hearts puts out. Believe it or not, that's me 6 months after my heart surgery.
Handsome as ever.
And one of the things why I show that picture then and now that I've gained a few pounds, but one of the things when I look at that picture, it always reminds me of how stress-free I was right after my surgery, because I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have the burdens of all that goes with that. I was totally focused on going to the club to work out 3 or 4 times a week and going through rehabilitation. And so it was a carefree lifestyle. One of the things that the further away you get from the surgery, life begins to catch up with us.
Yep.
And again, I started missing some sleep, the stress, working a little bit longer than I needed to, forgetting just to take care of me. And that's so critical for a heart healthy lifestyle. Doing whatever you can to eliminate that stress.
And I think that's a great thing to point out to people, because I know there are times where like you were doing so well. Well, yeah, you didn't have a lot of things to focus on. You know, your family and friends allowed you to focus on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you were off work, you had the time, you had these appointments. It's how do you fit in, just like in any situation, how do you then fit in as you start putting things back into your life, right? Now you're focusing on your family again, you're focusing on work again, you're focusing on everyday life. And how do you manage that stress? And how do you then fit those things in to make sure that you are doing the best thing for yourself so that you can pour more into other parts of your life?
One of the things that works for me in particular as a volunteer, because I still volunteer to see heart patients, I'm doing more of that virtually than going in the hospitals because of our current medical situation. But just going in and talking to other patients and seeing them, helping them learn about their situation makes me more compliant to what I have to do. It makes me make sure that I take my medicine every day, and I'm getting my water, and that I'm keeping my appointments, and so those are some of the important things. And let's face it, folks, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So all those other cares, they don't matter if you're not here. They just don't matter.
And I think that is something actually that one of the nurses said to my father when he was doing his rehab, and he's like, you know, at the time, I'm 81 years old, I still climb trees, and what are you telling me I have to do this physical therapy? I'm fine. And she said, you want to go home to your wife, right? Well, yeah, you can't take care of her if you can't take care of yourself. And at the time, my mom had pancreatic cancer. So he wanted to get home to her. And she just very bluntly, if you can't take care of yourself, how do you expect to take care of your wife? So, and that was one of the things, besides he was very determined, but that really got him going. You have to, and I know it's very cliche, but you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you are trying, it's never going to work. Nothing's ever going to get filled. And I think that is something that we all need to remember as we go into this new year and beyond, that it's not selfish, it's self-care, it's making it a priority, right? Not just when you're burnt out or when you are now sick and need to recover. It's doing it now, it's preventative. It's, you know, try to be more, you know, proactive in your health as opposed to reactive and keeping up with it. It's hard. It's absolutely hard. But it's something that we all need to learn to do.
Absolutely. And for heart patients, there are a number of different resources and great communities out there. I particularly, you know, I always want to tout Mended Hearts because of the direct care that we offer to one another, as well as American Heart Association. I'm sure that there are local organizations, it could be your church or other communities related to the hospital that can help with some of these lifestyle choices. But again, it's not rocket science. It's not the things that we need to do. We've all heard. Try and get at least 30 minutes of exercise 3 to 4 times a week, 5 times a week if you can. Get your rest. Make sure that you're not taking on any more burden than you have to. And even from a financial standpoint, you know, try and keep those in perspective. It's not easy. God knows if it was easy, you know, there wouldn't be so many of us out here trying to tell us how to do it. But we all need help. We need reinforcements. And just because something you did in the past worked, it may not work in the future. So you've got to be willing
Yes.
to adapt.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Everybody, check out heartsinthefamily.com. Go follow Mike on social media sites. They're all within where you can download the podcast. We have them all there. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful 2022, Mike.
Happy New Year to everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, remember to ask yourself, am I living a rooted life? Am I thriving or just surviving? If the answer is no, take time to think about what you are doing and what you need to do to make that answer a yes. One way to take action is to set up your free Empower Hour call with me, no charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, join me for my signature 12-week group coaching series, The Rooted Life. This series will assist you in achieving your goals and moving forward by letting go of the things that no longer serve you, learning to love yourself and others fully, and living life to its fullest. Go to getrootedradio.com to learn more about the 12-week series and to sign up for your free Empower Hour. Thank you again for tuning in. Happy New Year. Have an amazing day. And I look forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.